Hey everybody. Sorry for the delay in getting week 3 up to you. It's kind of a crazy nutty week. So um, I'm done reviewing everything. So five discussion boards, and so 6 assignments this week times 6 of you. Those 36 assignments I read. So not bad. I'm not complaining. Actually, I love every minute of it. It just takes time. But anyhow, so just a few thoughts. So you reviewed Path Goal, Leadership Member Exchange, and Transformational Leadership Models this week. And I really enjoyed your struggles and triumphs, trying to keep them straight, because they do overlap, but then each one has its own little kind of nuance. So again, it's important to not, it's important to understand it, and then to take away from it what resonates with you as your approach to leadership. There is not one right model. It's a matter of coming up with your own theory and then testing that to see what works best for you, what's comfortable for you to use and uncomfortable, and what works. Fundamentally, we do things because they work. Sometimes work for us, not necessarily for the people who are following. So we have to keep that in mind. But anyhow, so many of you commented that Path Goal, which that was discussion question 7, was very similar to situational theory. So I appreciated the excellent examples that you provided. Leadership Member Exchange, I could just feel a lot of light bulbs go off with that one in the conversation between in-group and out-of-group. I appreciated that someone said that, and I think it was written as part of a weakness of the theory, that are they truly out of group, or is it a bias or unconscious bias of our own? So I've always, I guess from my experience, and again, this is very limited because, as I think Nick pointed out, we don't spend a lot of time interviewing and really understanding out of group. But the few people that I can think of that were out of group that I've worked with, it was a conscious decision for most, for at least from my perspective. I've had to let go or fire a couple out of groups, and it was not because I didn't try. It did a lot of progressive discipline, tried to work with them, but there was an inability or an unwillingness to work to produce results that I needed. So I'd like to say that in most cases it was a mutually agreed decision. There was a couple that weren't. They were pretty upset. One of them, their wife, actually called the vice president of HR and complained about me. So I really, I joke, not because I take it lightly. It really bothered me. We lived in the same town. It wasn't that big, and I would run into him on occasion. I just feel horrible. But later, like a year later, he listed me as a reference for a job, which I found interesting. And no, he didn't list me. He didn't list me. But somebody knew. I knew somebody who he was interviewing at their institution, and they knew me and contacted me. And I gave him, I thought, a very fair but positive review, kind of off the record. And I mean, he had a lot of gifts to what he was doing, but what we needed him to do, he just didn't have the willingness or the ability to do it. So, and we tried to support him getting that ability, and there was no interest. So anyhow, long story short. So transformational, I also wanted to say with leader member, I kind of got stuck in a rabbit hole because did a Google Scholar search on out of group behaviors and research studies from that group because I was curious if there was anything out there. And there has been a lot, and I don't know, somewhat shocked by this because I think this theory is a bit old, but there's a lot still being written by about that and work being done on that theory. So if you get bored some Friday night, you can Google Scholar Research and look at some of the studies being put out on them. So transformational leadership, a couple of you commented on there being kind of constraints that go along with the job. Absolutely. I completely agree with you on that one. And a couple of you talked about the management by exception factor. I think that's factor, and of course, I don't have it right here. Oh, factor 6. So I mean, I totally get that there is concern with this criticism. But in my experience with students and with people that have reported to me, if done well, providing criticism or constructive feedback is typically very well received, especially if it's done within the context of I'm trying to help you improve. It's when you are held accountable and you don't know that you're being held accountable. So that passive exception, management of exception, that is really annoying. And I've had that happen to me before. And I have found myself tempted to do that too, where I've been tempted to say, well, but you did this wrong. And then I remembered, like, have you said anything to them about it? So it is very difficult in a management leadership position to identify areas for improvement. It's difficult for me to do that for you guys. I mean, I would prefer just to sit around and say what you do great. But somewhere in my sick little mind, I'm thinking that you're looking for opportunities to improve because you want to get your money's worth out of your degree. And I do feel that if I can help you now, that maybe later in your career, you'll be more open to that. So I think we have a couple of weeks coming up where maybe you're in that week right now where we learn how to invite feedback. So, but the worst situation is being confronted with feedback, especially on a performance eval, and never know that you were being held accountable or that it happened, last July and it's just coming up now. The other thing, and I worked under a couple leaders, managers, that it's like leadership by abandonment. I mean, I'm just kind of completely left on my own. And I never really know if I do anything right or wrong. So, that's not fun either. I'd rather have more consistent, fair feedback, in a balanced way. I don't want to just be dumped on, but a balanced feeling, this is what you're doing right. This is what you do wrong. So anyhow, just some thoughts. So feedback is super important. I also got caught in a rabbit hole looking for the documentary that James mentioned about Hitler. So there is quite a bit, and this book, only in this chapter, I think, does the book really address, I think, bad leadership. So it is equally important to study truly awful leaders, to learn where they went wrong, why they're wrong. So we can't spend all of our time just studying what's good. So I will look up. I found actually James told me it's on Netflix. So it's put out by the BBC. So I have Netflix. I'm going to do it. So discussion question 10 was on motivation. I can't even tell you how many times I've been asked the question or asked to speak on, so how do you motivate an employee, or what's your approach to motivating employees, or complaining about? It's so hard to motivate employees, and it just drives me crazy when people say that, because I fundamentally believe that you cannot motivate someone. You can put up incentives, but you cannot, in the long term, motivate people to perform. The only way you can really do it is to get to know somebody, find out what's important to them, find out why they're working, what they're trying to get out of this, and then to try to meet them at that place. So I found it interesting that all the models that you identified, which were great, and I really enjoyed reading about them, but all of them come from the perspective of the follower, their perspectives and their beliefs. So there is no magic bullet that if I have employee of the month or bonuses or what have you, that's going to motivate you. And in most cases, many of us are going to end up working for, or do work for nonprofits. We don't have bonuses. I've never got a bonus in my life since I've been in higher ed. So you have to find out what motivates somebody. And most people, as some of your models came up with, it's pretty altruistic. I mean, people want to know that they're making a difference and that they have competence, like they can do something, they know something, they can contribute. And they want barriers removed. They want to be able to do their job, do it well, do it with meaning. And once you get that kind of stuff, you as the leader or manager work to facilitate that. So anyhow, continue to work on that. Motivation is intrinsic. It comes from within. Each of us work for different reasons. There are theories that try to grasp and understand and make sense of those. And none of them are wrong. But you as a leader, it really does come down to knowing each of your people and realizing that whatever drives them to do what they do or drives them to do what they don't do, you're going to have to get to know them at that level and figure it out. So, anyhow, here I drew a picture on the back of this. So, no, it's on this one. So, discussion question 11 had to do with managing conflict. So I'm glad that you enjoyed the two TED Talks. I really enjoyed TED Talks. I don't know. I get the vibe that, if I were you, I would get really tired of reading and writing. So I think I try to add the videos just to add a little excitement. And most of those videos come from research that was conducted and written by, there's usually research behind what they're saying, their own research actually. So when it comes to managing conflict, I found it interesting that many of you, because the discussion question was asking you to compare and contrast, and most of you nailed it. The difference was that, do you attempt to keep emotion away? That doesn't belong at the workplace. We got to keep that controlled within any type of meeting structure that's the source of conflict, or do you just expect it and know it's coming? And I'm a very feeling person. In most cases, I try to avoid conflict because I don't like it. However, probably within the last less than 10 years, I have worked with some extremely diverse teams. I've built the teams to be diverse, and I'm just going to tell you, if you build these diverse teams, people with different personalities, different backgrounds, different perspectives, different job titles, different everything else, you will have conflict. You will. It is part of what you will be dealing with on a daily, if not hour by hour basis. So you have to learn how to handle conflict and how to manage it appropriately. And I want to take you back to the MBTI because like that's one of my favorite things. So I don't know if you can see this. Actually, I think I had to learn how to draw it backwards, which I didn't do that. So this is called the zigzag decision-making model. And it says that if you want to make a really good decision, and forgive me if I've already shared this with you, I can't remember, but these are the middle two preference scales. You want to look at the problem from a sensing, so you want to gather the facts and details. Then you want to think about all the possibilities, so look at it from the big picture perspective. Then you go down to thinking, and so you do an objective analysis of these two, thinking about pros and cons of each possibility. And then before you make the decision, you consider the feelings or the impact of that decision on the people that it will affect, all stakeholders. So I'm a big proponent of zigzag, and being, again, a feeling person, I naturally, not because I'm weak, not because I'm a woman, not because I'm uneducated or unintelligent or don't know how to control myself. I naturally look at things with initially with a feeling perspective. So I will likely skip over T and from the logic and look at subjective first and then go back to logic or objective approaches to making decisions. So if you say there's no emotional room in this meeting for any type of emotion, that doesn't make sense. Feeling is an emotion. Anger is emotion. There's lots of emotions. To make a well-balanced decision, you want to consider all four, and but also the objective T and the subjective F. So now I know that what you really meant by saying emotion doesn't belong is that you don't feel that there should be strong expressions of emotion. So you don't want anger, bitterness, crying, any of that kind of stuff, because that makes people uncomfortable. And I agree. In most cases, you hope a meeting doesn't get to the point where people feel that that's the option. So to do that, and again, I've learned this from the School of Hard Knocks, is that you need, oh my goodness, if I could just, I write notes, but they're like all over the place. You want to be able to control, oh, I know, I left it on the PowerPoint slide, so I didn't have to rewrite all this. Silly Carla. Anyhow, here it is. So to do that, you have to learn how to manage meetings very effectively. So to manage a meeting, and I've learned that this is from the School of Hard Knocks, you have to first appreciate differences. So you want to build your team, if you have the ability to do that or the option. You want to make sure that you have diverse perspectives, because it's not easy to do, but the outcome of it is light years ahead what you'll be able to achieve with a team that only thinks one way. You want to make sure that any interaction, so meetings, conference calls, even hallway conversations, are very well designed. So you want to make sure there's agendas, when appropriate, of course. You take meeting minutes. I'm not a huge proponent of using Robert's rules, but I kind of use like a version of it, where we are trying to arrive at some kind of balanced decision making and making sure every voice gets to be heard. You have to set ground rules. So in meetings that I've run, like when we first get started, we talk about ground rules. So, and I have everyone contribute. What should the ground rules be? Usually it's don't grandstand, no swearing, keep to the time allowed. If there's keep chit chat to the minimum, those kind of things. So, and then you constantly remind people of the ground rules. So on the meeting minutes, the agendas, I used to print them towards the top. I didn't go over them every time, but they were like right there. And if things got a little out of control the last time, then I'm like, let's spend some time reviewing the ground rules. The next thing is that you have to learn to role model them yourselves. So when things got heated, you have to make sure that you set the pace and control the environment, allowing every person to contribute the way that they want to, but holding them to those ground rules, and then holding yourself, obviously. And then that was the final thing, is just holding everyone accountable. So the couple times when I've let people grandstand or get out of control, or, where the anger was very vocal, I would approach them after the meeting and just, try to give them an opportunity to process through it. And I mean, not slap their hand or anything or write them up, but just say, you really seemed upset. Let's talk about it. Most emotion comes from a feeling of being out of control, and just allowing people the opportunity to process it is, in my opinion, is what has been very effective. So, what else? So somebody else commented on, what do you do, or how do you end a conflict when there's no consensus? That's an awesome question. The last thing you want to do is nothing, because that just drives people. That drives a lot of people crazy, especially people that need closure. Drives us bananas. So, what I've done, and again, I haven't researched this, but what the options are, but what has worked practically for me is you gain everyone's input, and then if there's no consensus, you say, well, I guess this one's on me, and you make a decision, you present the decision, and then you provide insight or transparency in how you made the decision. So you explain your process and why. And then I usually try to say, we're going to test this for the next 6 months or what have you, revisit it. And if it doesn't solve the problem, then we'll come back to it. So, and in most cases, people accept that. I've not had people, you have a few powders here and there, but ultimately, if you're in that role where it's your neck, if you're the one that's responsible, they're looking to you to take the lead. And you can't always manage by consensus. I'm a highly collaborative leader, but sometimes there's just not going to be an agreement, and you have to make the decision. So, okay. So finally, I think that's all about conflict that I wanted to mention. Get used to it, basically, is what my big advice. So finally, I wanted to talk about the final. Where the heck is that at? Here it is. The final reflection paper. So, probably 3 of you wrote some of the best reflection work I've ever seen. So, kudos to you. So I just felt this was worth bringing up again. So I don't know if you remember the Johari's window that we talked about. And again, this is all written backwards, but it's in week 1 if you want to go back and look at it. And every time you work on the Johari's window and a lot of these exercises, what you're doing is you're opening up your open self bigger and bigger by addressing the blind spot, some of the stuff that maybe you didn't know about yourself. I loved how a couple of you said, I didn't even know that was a thing. So, and here I read it in a book and it's like an actual thing. So you're opening up the blind spot, but then you're also uncovering the hidden spot too. And the result is that the open is becoming larger. And that is awesome. So the next thing to do once that open spot gets bigger is to start to use it. So you need to start communicating in these relationships that you have in the workplace and at home. It's just not bound to work. You start practicing some of this. So if you learn it and you don't use it right away, it's likely that you're going to forget it. And then you're going to think, I remember learning some stuff in that class, but I can't remember any of it. And that's going to be just a shame. So what I would advise you to do is practice it. So like with this conflict content, and you don't have to be in a big L position to use conflict. You can use it in team meetings. You can use it in conversations with your coworkers. And you just, try really listening to them from their perspective, helping to facilitate what they're seeing and how they're understanding it, supporting them, maybe redirecting. That is what helps people through conflict. So practice using some of what you've learned. Just practice it. Practice it in your home with your kids or with your family. So you all know that the saying, use it or lose it. So start using it. You don't have to be in a leadership position. In fact, you could do your leader a great service by being a really good follower, by helping members of the team understand decisions that are being made or changes that are impacting you. Attempt to do that. So remember last week we talked about that really good leader or followers focus on getting the job done. They work in the best interest of the organization's mission. They challenge the leader. They support the leader. So supporting the leader comes from also helping fellow followers get it. And then you can learn. So you learn a lot about leadership by watching your leader work. So anyhow, hopefully that was helpful. So I found the week to be really good, and I don't know about you guys, but I'm having a lot of fun. So if there's anything that I can help with, please let me know. I'm happy that many of you are using those 5 free passes that you have. Again, I don't record the score, but just know that there's going to be a 10 there for up to 5 for just the discussion questions. So they don't apply to the drop boxes or reflection questions. So so we're on to week 4. I think it's another huge week. And then remember, things start to taper down. So don't freak out on me. It'll get better. So again, if there's anything I can do, please be in touch. If you need extensions, please let me know. It's not a big deal. Next week, so week 5, I will be out of town just Thursday, Friday. So I might have a little bit of time here and there to do some grading. Hopefully I'll have hopefully I have time to get a lot of it done before I leave. But then I'm back on Friday, and I think I have the whole day where I can just sit and crunch it out. So it might be a little bit later than normal. So this just is kind of a heavy travel time for a lot of meetings that I'm involved with. So anyhow, have a great week. I look forward to talking to you soon. Thanks. Bye.